Hello and very warm welcome at Amish Cycle 5858. I am Amish Cycle. Foreign news have been reported by American, European, Asian, African, Australian news channels and the news agencies. So please let's go to the headlines.
Tonight, breaking news. The war in Iran entering week 3. Thousands more U.S. forces are on the way as the economic fallout grows. Also, the powerful storm barreling east as millions brace for high winds. And the Oscar preps in Los Angeles tonight. First, Iran defiant amid a blistering assault. New images of U.S. strikes on key Iranian facilities. CENTCOM saying more than 90 military targets hit. President Trump threatening to attack Iran's crucial oil facilities next if Iran continues to ship in the Strait of Hormuz. Thousands more Marines and sailors now headed to the Middle East. The economy. Gas U.S. up 73 cents since it began. Diesel nearly $5 a gallon. Shipping costs going up. UPS and FedEx adding surcharges. Food prices under pressure now too. A powerful storm barreling east. Michigan synagogue attack. Suspects seen buying thousands of fireworks. Synagogue officials grateful for the preparations they made. It could have been so much worse. And an explosion at a Jewish school in Amsterdam. The mayor calling it a deliberate attack against the Jewish community. Southwest Airlines ending service to 2 major airports in Chicago and Washington, D.C. The Big 12 game heading into overtime and the buzzer beater sending Arizona to the conference final. The dramatic close call for 2 workers repairing a mountain road when the hillside came sliding down around them. And the countdown to the 98th Academy Awards. We go behind the scenes of the live performances with the music director preparing his hand-picked orchestra and the visionary choreographer with the dancers rehearsing their golden rendition.
From ABC News, this is ABC World News Tonight. Reporting tonight from Los Angeles.
Good evening. Thanks for joining.
On this Saturday night, no end in sight with a new wave of U.S. bombardments on Iran's military sites and a fresh deployment of troops. President Trump deflects questions about when to declare victory.
I have no idea what
Mr. Cox, de-escalation.
we remind all belligerents in this conflict their responsibility here to intervene.
Amidst conflicts in plans, the rising price of oil means a hike in airfares, and how a 4-legged postmaster in a small BC community may help to keep the rural post office open.
Global National. Reporting tonight.
Good evening. Thanks for joining us. Tensions are mounting over the effective closure of the Strait of Hormuz that has been choking off a fifth of the world's oil supply. Today, U.S. President Donald Trump renewed his calls for nations to send warships to keep the strait open. The president
change of heart. 3 members of the Iranian women's football team leave Australia after being granted humanitarian visas to stay. Iran unleashes on the Gulf, vowing to respond to a US attack on Kharg Island, while Donald Trump calls on countries to send warships to the region. Formula One cancels next month's Grand Prix in Bahrain and Saudi Arabia due to the war. The Australian Defence Force to deploy troops to flood-affected parts of the Northern Territory. Hello and welcome to ABC News. I'm Miriam Korowa. Three members of the Iranian women's football team have decided to return to Iran after they were granted humanitarian visas. Two players and one of the team's technical staff withdrew their asylum applications to stay in Australia. According to Iranian state media, they're travelling to Malaysia to begin their journey back to Iran.
Hello, you're watching Sky News. I'm Nick Qureshi. Here are the headlines. Just days after insisting America did not need assistance, Donald Trump appeals for help from the UK, France and China to get ships through the Strait of Hormuz. That's after the US struck Iran's main oil export hub, Kharg Island, as 5,000 extra Marines are deployed to the region. The consequences of war being felt here in the UK. The Chancellor is set to help families struggling with energy bills. Also ahead, the family of a man who died waiting for life-saving brain surgery tells us they're furious that lessons are not being learned. And in sport, France win rugby's Six Nations after a sensational win over England. Hello, good morning. Nice to have your company here on this Sunday. Less than a week has passed since Donald Trump insisted America did not need Britain's help in the Middle East. You might recall he accused Keir Starmer of seeking to join a war that the US had already won. However, the US president has now made an appeal for help from allies, including the UK and even China, to help break the Iranian blockade of the Strait of Hormuz. Tehran has effectively shut the shipping lane, which is a key artery for the world's oil. Writing on social media, the US president says America has beaten and completely decimated Iran, both militarily, economically and in every other way. But the countries of the world that receive oil through the Hormuz Strait must take care of that passage, and we will help a lot, in capitals there. The US will also coordinate with those countries so that everything goes quickly, smoothly and well. He goes on, this should have been always a team effort, and now it will be. It will bring the world together toward harmony, security and everlasting peace.
This is DW News, our top stories. U.S. President Donald Trump has urged allies to send warships to keep the Strait of Hormuz open for shipping as Iranian forces continue their retaliation campaign. He said the U.S. Navy will start escorting tankers very soon. About a fifth of global oil and liquefied natural gas passes through the strait. Iran has called on people in the United Arab Emirates to evacuate 3 ports. A military spokesman said they are targets because the U.S. used them for attacks. An Iranian drone strike caused a fire at the Fujairah oil terminal in the Emirates. The UAE Defense Ministry says Iran fired 9 ballistic missiles and 33 drones at the Emirates on Saturday. Cuban President Miguel Diaz-Canel has said there will be no impunity for acts of vandalism and violence after anti-government protesters attacked the Communist Party office. Earlier, a rally against power cuts and food shortages began peacefully in the central city of Maron. Video showed a large fire and people throwing rocks at the windows of a building.
Good morning, I'm Yasmin Yonkers with your headlines this hour. U.S. President Donald Trump calls on nations to send warships to help secure the Strait of Hormuz. He says that countries that rely on oil carried through the vital sea passage should take responsibility for keeping it open. Exports of crude out of the region hampered even further, with the UAE reportedly suspending loading operations at the port of Fujairah after an Iranian drone attack. The damage coming not long after the U.S. struck military targets at Kharg Island. And 3 Iranian footballers who sought asylum in Australia decide to return home. Australia's Home Affairs Minister said his government had done everything it could to ensure the women were given the chance to have a safe future in the country. And amidst the war in Iran, officials from the US and China are set to meet to lay the groundwork for a summit between Presidents Trump and Xi in Beijing. Top economic officials from both nations will resume dialogue in Paris later today. And those are your latest headlines from the CNA Newsroom.
This is Asia Now.
Hi, and good morning. It's 9 a.m. in Singapore and Hong Kong, 6:30 in New Delhi, and 8 a.m. in Jakarta. I'm Yasmin Yonkers at this hour. U.S. President Donald Trump calls on nations to send warships to help secure the Strait of Hormuz. He says that countries that rely on oil carried through the vital sea passage should take responsibility for keeping it open. Exports of crude out of the region hampered even further, with the UAE reportedly suspending loading operations at the port of Fujairah after an Iranian drone attack. The damage coming not long after the U.S. struck military targets at Karga Island. And 3 Iranian footballers who sought asylum in Australia decide to return home. Australia's Home Affairs Minister said his government had done everything it could to ensure the women were given the chance to have a safe future in the country. U.S. President Donald Trump has urged global powers to help America secure the Strait of Hormuz as Iran steps up retaliatory attacks. And he said that many countries are sending warships to help keep the critical trade waterway open, but did not identify them. He hopes the likes of China, France, Japan, and other nations deeply affected by the Iranian blockade would send their ships to the strait. The new Supreme Leader, Mushtaba Khamenei, earlier said Iran will continue blocking the world's busiest oil channel. Foreign Minister Abbas Arabchi added that it's only closed to Iran's enemies. UK officials say at least 16 ships operating on and around the Strait of Hormuz have been attacked since the war began late last month. A representative of the Supreme Leader says a rare exception has been given to India, which has been allowed to sail through. India confirmed this, saying that 2 tankers carrying liquefied petroleum gas have crossed the Strait of Hormuz.
Several of our ships remain in standby in the Gulf region. We propose to continue to
to warships in the Strait of Hormuz to help secure the vital shipping route. The US president calling on several countries, including France, the UK, and China, to ensure that Iran can no longer use the channel as a threat. In Lebanon, the Iran-backed group Hezbollah says its fighters have engaged in direct clashes with Israeli forces in the south of the country as fresh Israeli strikes hit Beirut. It comes as reports indicate Israel and Lebanon could hold direct talks in the coming days, with discussions expected to focus on the disarmament of Hezbollah. And France take a last-gasp win over England to seal the Six Nations Rugby Championship in a 13-try thriller. 7 England tries were not enough as Thomas Ramos kicked Les Bleus to a 48-46 victory in front of a roaring home crowd, securing back-to-back titles.
Africa News. The news.
Senegal has made an early payment of nearly $500 million on its external debt, avoiding a default that could have shattered investor confidence. The Central Bank of West African States transferred funds to holders of Eurobonds maturing in 2028 and 2048, covering both principal and coupons. The move comes after Senegal's economy plunged into turmoil following the discovery of 13 billion in hidden debt, the largest such case in a country with an IMF program. The revelation froze IMF funding and locked Senegal out of international bond markets, forcing it to rely on regional markets. President Bassirou Diomaye Faye's government insists Senegal will not default. But the path forward is fraught with painful choices. The country is already cutting spending, closing agencies, shedding jobs, while citizens bristle at austerity. Ugandan opposition leader Bobi Wine says he has fled the country to escape a military manhunt following last month's disputed presidential election. In a video posted Saturday, an unshaven Wine told supporters, "By the time you see this video, I will have left the country. At the right time, I will come back and continue with the cause." Wine went into hiding shortly after the January 15th vote, which official results show President Yoweri Museveni won with 71%. The hunt is being led by the Army Chief General Muhoozi Kainerubaga, the president's son and presumptive heir, who has posted repeated threats against Wine on social media, calling him a baboon and a terrorist. Museveni, 81-year-old, is set to be sworn in for a 7th term in May, extending his 4-decade rule. A large number of pro-Iran Shia Muslims in Nigeria organized a rally on Friday, displaying images of the deceased Ayatollah and shouting shame to America in spite of a significant security presence in the capital.
And everybody feels the pain of killing Sayyid Khamenei, except if you are not human. But to those people that kill him, now I'm very sure they are regretting because they are killing.
America, Mark Levin, and this Life, Liberty, and Levin Saturday. Thank you for being here. I have a question. Do we want to win this war? Do we want to win this war with Iran? Well, I know you do. You, Mr. and Mrs. America, you're patriots, but do the Democrats want to win this war? Do the leftists want to win this war? Do the media want to win this war? They sure as hell act like they don't. Even though they're not outwardly rooting for the enemy, they're military. There. I want you to look at Chuck Schumer. Go.
The two biggest threats to Israel, the two most existential threats. Than any. He has launched sanctions against Iran, and having an effect, he has made it clear that he will not support a nuclear Iran. He has made it clear that the policy of containment is not a good policy. And on this on Iran, and I've said this to a couple of Romney supporters who agree that if the sanctions fail and military action is warranted, a re-elected President Obama is far more likely to launch that kind of military action, probably in concert with Israel, than would Mitt Romney.
Thank you for watching. I'm Shakil 5858. I hope you will come again. Have a good life. Bye-bye.